On May 4th, 2023, a large object of unknown size and origin was seen hurtling toward the Hawaiian coast at a speed of approximately 340 miles per hour. It crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and Navy response vessels were ordered to quarantine the area immediately. Official news reports stated that the object was a small radioactive container dropped from the International Space Station. It had been scheduled for a routine disposal 2 weeks later near Point Nemo, but a computer error caused it to be dropped earlier, and thus inconvenienced the local freighters and fishermen. But when have the government ever told the public the complete truth? If I hadn't been there that day, I think I would have accepted this story. I was on holiday to visit my family in Waipahu, and my uncle surprised all of us with a fishing trip at the last minute. I have never been a fan of sailing, even though these waters were literally my backyard for my entire childhood. My gaze has always been toward the sky, the ocean of stars that we can see on a clear night. Honestly, that was the only thing that excited me about this trip. The downside was being stuck in a dinghy alongside my father, brother and uncle for nearly 5 hours just to experience a nightmare. Of course, at the time, none of us knew that would happen. How could we? When we should all have been looking at the heavens, my attention was on telling my father that I wasn't wasting his good money having to repeat a semester of college. Astrophysics is not exactly an easy field to get into. My university professor back in Washington is tough as nails and wants all of his students to rival the alumni that come out of Harvard and MIT. I think I told him. It wasn't entirely a lie. I didn't want to reveal the real reason I had slacked off was because of meeting my girlfriend Rose. I didn't need to have my ear talked off about that. Father seemed satisfied with my answer, slapping the back of my brother's head and telling him that he needed to make a name for himself too. I did not know that would be the last thing he would ever say. And I wish I hadn't laughed at my brother's expense. Above our heads, we heard what sounded like an explosion. And looking up, it appeared that something the size of a small plane had ripped the sky apart. All of us stopped what we were doing and watched as the ball of fire spread across the clouds and moved towards the open ocean. I didn't know the speed at the time, but it was, as my uncle would say, booking it. "We need to move away," my father shouted as we tried to raise the sail, but the velocity of the approaching object was causing the wind to suck toward it. I'm honestly not sure it would have mattered much, given what happened next. As it entered the atmosphere, it made a deafening noise that split my eardrums. And then, before I knew what was happening, it smashed into the water about 2 miles from our yacht. The waves crashed up, and I scrambled to grab my life jacket as Dad lost control of the wheel. The water had to be at least a mile high, and I heard my brother scream as our small ship was toppled by the unexpected explosion. My body flew up into the air, and I reached a hand out to grab the sail as the entire thing fell upside down onto the ocean, all my perception being deafened by the resounding void of the water. Under the pressure of the ocean, I heard 2 further explosions from the object, causing ripples to shudder through the surrounding area as I swam to the surface. Fire and smoke was already spiraling from the object, and it was leaking fuel across the water toward our location. A final explosion ignited the gasoline and put our tiny ship ablaze. I shouted for my father and my brother, grabbing a hold of the side of the yacht and climbing on the slippery underbelly that now serves as a raft. From this angle, I could see that the object resembled some kind of escape pod. It was cylindrical and silver, and looked like it had been through hell to reach Earth. My brother came to the surface first, gasping for breath as I jumped out and helped him to the boat. He was desperately trying to find our father, but I knew we couldn't stay on the burning yacht long as the fire surrounded us. Then, we heard helicopters, and I told my brother to stay on the boat as I swam to the object. Perhaps Dad had gone to that side of the disaster, hoping it would stabilize. I ducked under the fire and swam with what little energy I had left to the escape pod, resurfacing in time to hear the approaching helicopter's activate their searchlights. The hatch to the pod was open, I realized. And before I could see what was inside, a metallic glove muffled my mouth and yanked me within. I was soon face to face with an astronaut in a claustrophobic shell. They gestured for me to remain silent as the helicopters started using their intercoms for a search. I peeked out to see my brother waving to them for help. My uncle had managed to board the ship safely, and they were standing atop the underbelly of his yacht, shouting to the black helicopter. In response, I saw an armored soldier aim a sniper rifle at my family and put a bullet into their skulls. If the astronaut had not been covering my mouth, I would have screamed. As the helicopter moved closer, I realized the same fate could befall me. But before I had time to even think about my mortality, the astronaut pushed me into the bottom part of his pod and passed me a name tag that had been velcroed on his suit. He passed out alongside me afterward. United States astronaut Richter Belschen. Before I could ask another question, the roof above us sealed the pod and activated some kind of escape system that separated us from the top half. I watched as I was jettisoned into the dark ocean, and I then took off the helmet of the astronaut. He was in his late 20s, American, and looked like he had just barely made it to the surface. I knew that he had just saved my life, and his quick, desperate attempt to provide me information about himself was a cry for help. As we traveled to the shore, I decided to help him out of his suit, reasoning that whoever was searching for him would know what to look for and kill us. When we settled on an empty shore, I pulled him from the pod and waved a passerby down to call 911. Despite the fact that this man has changed my life forever, I couldn't imagine ignoring the mystery surrounding this strange event and leaving him there. "I'll find you again," I swore as I saw an ambulance in the distance and made myself scarce before they asked me too many questions. I kept the name tag hidden in my pocket and repeated my story to family when I was reunited. That I didn't know anything about the crash or how I had even wound up on the beach. Thankfully, the Coast Guard was so busy with other issues that day that I was not a priority, and they never checked on me. I kept my head down the next few days, but also kept checking listings at nearby hospitals for any record of an unidentified American man. My aunt is an on-call nurse for several around this area, and unbeknownst to her, she always forgets to log out from her work email at home, so it didn't take long to figure out where the astronaut had been taken. Despite the fact that I had only lost my family a few days prior, I felt a sense of impending doom growing surrounding this man and knew I needed to contact him quickly. I finally got a hit near East Honolulu and got into my car and drove to the small therapy center. A John Doe had been registered with them about the same time as our small boat sank. Getting there was the easy part, and I went at a time when staff was light, so going into his room didn't stir any prying eyes as far as I was aware. Seeing him again, hooked up to machines and just struggling to stay alive, I felt pity and anger all at once. I lost everything because of him, but I needed to know why. I placed a chair against the door to prevent us from being interrupted, and then flipped the lights on to wake him up. The astronaut's eyes flickered in panic and focused on me. You're... My name is Dean, and you're Richter, is that correct? I said, stepping closer to get a good look at his face. Yes, I suppose I have you to thank for my current circumstances? The astronaut asked. Where is my equipment? I ditched your suit in the ocean, I told him, crossing my arms and commenting. I went through a lot of trouble to make sure those people in the special ops didn't hunt you down like they did my uncle and brother. You must have the spirit of a real warrior to be able to stand up and fight for a stranger, he commented as he looked down at his injuries. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and right now I'm wondering if I'm repeating the same mistake. Tell me one good reason why I shouldn't alert the nurses to who you are," I said. "Did you find the flash drive?" he muttered as he sat up and winced in pain. "What? You didn't mention anything about a flash drive. Don't try to change the subject." "No, listen, I'm not. That drive is the key to everything that they've been working on. It must be leaked to the public immediately." "And where exactly is it?" I asked. I thought I gave it to you." "In the heat of the moment, I must have dropped it in the pot or on the beach," he admitted as he told me to pass my cell phone. I was a tad reluctant to comply with these ramblings, but curiosity won out, and I unlocked it and handed it over. He narrowed his eyes and did a few Google searches, typing rapidly as he looked up news articles about the incident. "They're already covering up my crash. It won't be long before they find me," he realized as he passed it back to me and showed me a webpage of a storage center in the downtown Honolulu area. During my time on the space station, I transferred several backups of my files to that location. It might not be as much of a linchpin as the flash drive, but it's something. Hold on, you aren't making sense, Mr. Belshin. You were on the International Space Station, and you're on a run from who exactly? Military? It was hard to determine if he was spotting nonsense, or was on the cusp of something revelatory. But I was trying my best to keep up with his train of thoughts. "It's like you said, special ops. This wasn't from the ISS. People on Earth think that's the only thing floating up there. But they're wrong. We've had several hidden projects in the works since the turn of the millennium. This was called Zagreus. Not that it matters much. Listen, you can still try to stop what they are doing if you get to that storage unit," he explained. Just then, I heard a nurse tap on the door, and I realized I was out of time. I slid the phone into my pocket and gave him an icy glare. "I can't make any promises. I'll check out your lead. But if you're just running me in circles, I will be the first to rat you out," I warned. Richter shook his head, trying to remain conscious. "Won't matter. They'll find me soon enough. My days are numbered. Go. Save what is left of your family if you can. Leave this world." The nurse shook the door handle, and I moved the chair out of the way, giving an apologetic lopsided smile as they entered. "Who are you?" they asked accusingly, as they saw the astronaut's levels were spiking, probably stress-induced from our short, chaotic conversation. "I thought I knew him," I lied as I hurried out of the hospital room and down the hallway. Thankfully, the nurse did not follow. My heart was still pounding in my head as I made it to the parking garage and finally looked at the coordinates for the storage unit. Not like I have anything else to do, I muttered with a deep sigh as I got into my car and drove to the location. On the way, I used my car's Siri to search for Zagreus. The robotic voice gave me a rundown of the ancient name.
Zagreus, here's what I found on Google, commonly referred to as the alter ego of the Greek god Hades, or possibly the reborn son of Zeus and Persephone. Zeus intended him to be his successor, but a jealous Hera summoned the Titans to tear Zagreus limb from limb. Also identified as connecting to the Egyptian deity Osiris.
Unfortunately for me, all of that information brought me no closer to determining what the astronaut had been a part of. Typical government code names. Bunch of nonsense, I thought, as I parked my car at the storage unit. When I went to find the keys, I lied and gave them the astronaut's name. They were willing to offer me access to the unit if I paid the back fees, which were apparently near $300. Shouldn't it have gone to default? I asked in shock. The account was still in good standing because it paid for other services in the area, so we didn't clean out the unit. Can you pay or what? The man behind the counter asked. I made a mental note that Boucher now owed me, and walked toward the unit he had directed me to find. Inside, I wasn't too surprised to find a small storehouse of motherboards and computer equipment, all of which was powered by a small generator in the back corner. Wasting no time, I started searching the active computer for anything that might clue me in on Belshon and his research. There wasn't much at first. A few video diaries of him and his teammates building some kind of artificial environment in space. And then a few other clips of monitoring the moon's surface. I didn't really know for sure what I was supposed to be looking for. Then, I saw a video that made me pause, and my jaw drop. I played it back slowly, making sure I wasn't seeing things. The clip said it was documented during April, during a hybrid solar eclipse. Something massive beneath the surface of the moon had caused a quake to destroy at least what looked like a small city. Then, the next clip showed the quake had even greater devastation, and it had a voice narration from Belshon.
It's finally happening. We've been studying this thing for months now, and I know that the others are trying to deny the reality of what we are seeing. But the proof is undeniable. Something beneath the surface of our moon is alive and bursting from the ground. I'm sending the readings in a separate file as proof of its biological makeup and mass.
I find that file next. My eyes widening as his estimation had calculated the life form to be approximately the size of Texas, or perhaps a little bigger. Almost the entire half circumference of the moon, I realized as I recalled my studies. How was that even possible? As I read the files on the project that Belshon had sent, my worry and dread grew. He had been assigned to the project because of his military background, and told that the main focus would be on architecture and collaboration with United Nations agencies towards Mars colonization. Yet, every file I was finding showed that Belshon was focused instead on procuring samples of this life form from the dark side of the moon. Early in February, he predicted that the life form was coming out of a hibernation due to their interference.
Within a year, we may lose our moon.
His voice chillingly prophesied. I looked back toward the full moon above me, wondering if that was already coming true. There were still holes in the story that frightened me, including why Belshon had decided to bail and flee here to Earth. Had the project taken a dark turn? And was our planet in danger from this monstrous lunar beast? I stepped out of the storage unit and checked my phone. It was late. My aunt had contacted me 3 times, but I couldn't even think about going home right now. I needed answers. Belshon was my only source, so I went back to the hospital as quickly as I could. I don't really know if I was being as subtle as I could be. Because of the strange videos I had seen on Belshon's computers, I was honestly trying not to freak out. I have been studying the stars and have been in love with astronomy since I was a young boy. To imagine that our moon could house such a massive creature hidden away all this time, it sounded impossible. Belshon would have the truth, I thought as I reached the right floor. Just as the elevator doors opened though, I stopped dead in my tracks to see 2 men dressed like they were federal agents talking to a nurse. I tried to make myself discreet and went over to a nearby waiting room, pretending to read a magazine until they left. I wished I had been close enough to hear their conversation. But another part of me was glad I hadn't. These agents could easily be the same people that killed my family. I realized as I walked over to the nurse's desk and casually asked about the John Doe patient. The nurse I had met earlier seemed surprised I had returned. I'm sorry, I didn't have a way to reach his family. He passed away a short time ago. I felt my palms becoming sweaty as I asked her to repeat that. How did he die? I muttered. We haven't got the official report in yet, sir. And unless you can provide some sort of proof that you are related, it's confidential. A second nurse said. This one seemed suspicious of my arrival. And I guess the federal agents had warned the staff to keep an eye out for anyone making inquiries. I thanked them both and scurried back to a nearby restroom, locking myself in a stall. I began to vomit as I realized that this also meant those men were aware that someone was involved in rescuing the astronaut. Before I could even fathom the fact that they were searching for me, I heard the restroom door creak open and someone bang on the stall. "Occupied," I said weakly as I threw up again. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," the stranger warned, and immediately my whole body went stiff. I turned to look at the shoes under the stall door and realized it was one of the federal agents. "I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered. "We've already pulled security footage and confirmed you visited former Lieutenant Belshin's room about 3 hours ago. It would be in your best interest to reveal the nature of your relationship with him now, before things get ugly," a second voice said. They were guarding the door too, I realized. I slid the restroom door open and looked the federal agent in the eye, trying my best to think on my feet. "This is a public space. If you lay a hand on me, I'll scream bloody murder and dropkick you," I warned. The first man actually stifled a laugh. "All we want is the flash drive. Cooperate and we'll let you go," he told me. Before I could sputter another reply, they kicked me to the floor and gruffly checked my pockets. The only thing on me was my phone, which made me realize I had stupidly forgotten to delete the info about the storage unit. They forced my thumb against the lock and then pushed me back into the restroom. "This storage unit. Did you go there?" the second man asked. I didn't know what to say, so I lied. "Belshin told me to make backup files and distribute them across the web to contacts he has around the world. He said he was going to expose you." Thankfully, they believed me, but I wasn't sure if it was going to help my chances of surviving this encounter. "If you're smart, you are going to keep whatever you found to yourself. Is that understood?" the second man said, briefly showing a gun hidden under his coat. "There's no mention of a flash drive. Shit," the first man mumbled. They pushed me against the wall. "You're going to help us find it. Otherwise, you will wind up just like that traitor," the first man demanded. A passerby stumbled into the restroom, interrupting their interrogation, and the federal agents were forced to let me go. Even as I slipped into the elevator though, I could feel their prying eyes watching my every move. There's a target on my back now, because they think I know something, and the only reason they've kept me alive is to find this flash drive, I realized as I made it home. My aunt chewed me out and nearly burst into tears because she was so worried. I wanted to confide in her, but this was too big of a secret to burden her with. I knew it wouldn't take them long to realize I had lied about distributing the info from Belshin's computer. Once they know I'm the last remaining person, I won't be alive much longer. My only card I could play was to find that flash drive and use it as leverage. I sat down in my room looking at a picture of my brother and dad, smiling at his graduation. "I wish you were here to help me figure this out," I whispered, trying to recall what Belshin had told me. He claimed he had given it to me already, I realized. Just then, my aunt knocked on my door and brought in a basket of laundry. "Dane, I'm sorry for lashing out at you. These past few days, they have been so hard. We have got to stick together," she said, as I saw the astronaut's name tag sticking out of my pants pocket, near the middle of the basket. I suddenly knew where the drive was. I gave her a hug and offered to sort the clothes, using it as an excuse to grab the tag. As I took it out of the clothes, I ripped it apart. Within the seams of the fabric, I saw the tiny USB drive and thanked my lucky stars. Quickly, I connected it to my laptop to see what the final piece of the puzzle was. I was expecting another video from Belshin, but this one was from some other elite player in this scheme. A NATO commander, I assumed, from the rank on his collar.
The following details relate to Project Zagreus and to the Karen transfer team. As many of you know, for the past several years, our international team of scientists has become aware of a living presence on the dark side of the moon. This beast, which the project was named after, will likely awaken by the fall of 2024, if not by spring of 2025. Upon hatching from the shell of the lunar surface, it will destroy approximately half of the celestial satellite.
A video showed projections of the impact on the Earth's surface, and I realized that according to their predictions, our world would be decimated.
This will be an extinction-level event to rival that of the dinosaurs. As a result, we have focused all our energy on the Karen transfer. Those involved in the project will ensure that the list of candidates for colonization are ready at the latest by summer of 2023.
Next, Belgian provided a printout of that mentioned list. I didn't have time to review all of it, but immediately a few of the names stuck out as prominent politicians and billionaires. It didn't take me long to realize that this list was only for the elite and upper class of our planet. The video ended by explaining that the operation was to be made completely classified to the general public.
We will create whistleblowers for distraction, discussing alien threats to keep attention in the opposite direction,
the commander explained. The overwhelming dread I had felt came crashing down on me. They're going to let the rest of us die here on this planet, while they escape to the stars. This is what their master plan is, and what Belgian was murdered for. He must have stumbled on the transfer list and realized it means dooming more than 90% of Earth's population. I took a long look in the mirror and decided what to do next. The next morning, I was at the nearest federal building, requesting an audience with anyone about Belgian. I told him I had critical information that needed to be handed. I was shuffled into a small room that reminded me of the hospital stall and grilled with questioning. I had one stipulation for handing over the flash drive. I know about the transfer. I need signed documents by whoever the hell is in charge that my family will be on that ship, I told him. I made sure to confirm that I had not sent the drive to anyone else, but also to make it clear I had a contingency in place should they try to decide and silence me like they did Belgian. Finally, after hours of this same conversation going round and round, they relented and agreed to my terms. You're a smart man. Your family will consider you their savior, one commander said to me. I honestly don't care, and I don't want them to know about any of this, I admitted. I repeated that I would not hand over any evidence until my family was secure. So, that is what happened. Over the next few months, we've acclimated to life off of Earth in this new space program. And I have faithfully kept my mouth quiet about Belgian and the moon. I know that anyone hearing this now will likely view me as a scum because I chose to save myself and those I love, rather than expose the plans of this operation. But I am not a hero like Richter was. I can see a certain logic to their argument and plan. There will not be enough time to save all of mankind. Even so, I have grown sick of leading this lie, and I cannot forgive them for what they did to my brother and dad. So, now that I've managed to gain their trust, I twist the knife and make them bleed. This station gives me a chance to do what I threatened months ago, and I distribute this proof across the dark web to anyone who will hear it. I am not sure if anyone will believe it or not. I am uncertain if I am too late. I can see where the creature is slowly emerging from the moon. It is a terrifying sight to behold. Perhaps Belgian was too late all along. Perhaps there is nothing either of us can do except watch as the world burns and the sky falls. I don't even know where to start. If you've managed to intercept this, then odds are that you're in for a bad time. If you're one of the bastards back home who got me into this mess, then I hope you rot. Either way, I'm trying to send this out to as many people as possible. At the very least, you deserve a little warning of what's to come. From the top, my name is Pierce Valens. For the past 7 years now, I believe, I have honestly lost track of time. Anyway, I have been stationed on the moon. I'm a geologist, called up here to help with a mining operation after some unknown minerals were found. Unfortunately, I'm the last person alive up here now, and I don't see that lasting too much longer. So, consider this my last will and testament. I ain't getting out of here, and I'll be damned if the rot is getting out of here either. Guess if I have any solace, it's that the bigwigs who were up here bit it first. Okay, none of this is going to make sense unless we start from the top. The big thing you need to know is that the space race ended and became more of a space marathon. It wasn't about who finished first. It was just about getting there and setting up your territory to see what you could find. The states ended up working together with other countries. China, the former Soviets, India. Basically, anyone who could pop a rocket into orbit got an invitation. Hooray, world unity, right? Not when it comes to this. Everyone is up here working together, but they're about to end the entirety of humanity through their combined efforts. All their resources went into building a nice little outpost up here on the moon, though I'm not sure what the original purpose of it was. Eventually, probably around, 6 years or so ago from the briefing I got, they started mining. Initially, it started out as just a let's find out what's under the surface type of thing. Innocent enough, right? Find some rare minerals and maybe change how things operate on Earth. Except, the mining is what got us into this stupid situation. About 3 years ago was when they found the Great Table. That's the technical term for it anyway. Apparently, it was during one of the regular mining operations. Workers tunneling under the surface of the moon. Seems like a fantastic idea, right? Ended up breaking through into this huge hollow antechamber. Big discovery, right? Turns out, Hollow Moon was the least of our conspiracy-addled worries. This place was big, located pretty damn close to the center of the satellite. But it didn't match up. The dimensions of the place made no goddamn sense when compared to our measurements of the moon itself. When placed in comparison to the surface area, our tunnels and everything else, it's like it took up far more room than physically possible. Yet, nothing was different if you were looking down from the surface. That threw everyone for one hell of a loop, naturally. I was already here for geological survey, testing out samples that some of the excavation crew brought back and seeing what they compared to back on Earth. Nothing too crazy, and the pay was good at the start, especially for how easy the work was. Most of the materials found up here were just different forms of basalt, silicon, the occasional deposit of iron, all stuff we've seen before. I can still remember watching the live feed when they found the chamber. We had excavated down probably 300 miles below the surface of Earth's lunar body. As far as what they were trying to find, I don't know. Maybe they were hoping for water or some new energy source. Instead, we found a vast, empty cavern that steadily kept sloping downward. I honestly was surprised we didn't hit the top of it and fall through, instead crashing through almost perfectly perpendicular to the floor of it. They set up an elevator to get more of us down there before long, and let me tell you, just stepping into that cavern almost broke my brain. See, one thing the moon has going for it is the lack of light pollution. Set up at the right spot on the base, and you could see stars you never thought existed. Entire galaxies were visible far off, almost to the naked eye, if you looked hard enough. One of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen, and you could catch it from almost anywhere on the surface. In here though, complete darkness. It was a void, even with our strongest lights set up. Couldn't see the top of the place. No ceiling above. just the dark absence of anything. It was the first time I'd seen complete darkness in a while, and something about it was just primal. Everything in me told me to run the moment I stepped down there. We eventually set up a full base camp and started exploring the chamber. We never found an end to it. The entire thing just stretched on forever, even after we had an estimated 600 miles covered. There's no way we wouldn't find some end around there with the dimensions of the moon. I fully expected to come across a massive cavern wall at any point, ready to crack through to the surface on the other side, or at least into something. But no, we just kept moving, until we found the Great Table. I wasn't on the mission that found the first bit of rot. I did see that team when they got brought back through our base camp though. The videos they had, God, it was like a bad movie. The pale lights of their suits were lighting solid rock in every direction, the darkness beyond encroaching like it was trying to take the team. Eventually though, the color of the rock changed. It was so gradual you would hardly notice it at first, just the lightest hint of dark creeping into the grey rock. Eventually though, it started clustering, darkening the grey to a dark charcoal color. Eventually, it took over so fully, such a dark black, that it mixed into the abyss around them, making ground near indistinguishable from the void. Even with a more high-powered light, it still looked like the team was just floating in space, likely to fall into the ground at any moment. Every so often, there would be a crack in the floor, a deep green breaking through the black. I can't really blame the team for being hesitant to check it, but eventually one of them noticed that the cracks were pulsating. One finally suggested that he believed it was glowing, and that was where the first mistake was made. The 5 members of the team gathered close, each putting a hand on another before turning off their lights one by one down the line. As the darkness began closing in with each one deigniting, the green glow of the cracks became more defined. They were indeed pulsating, the green ebbing and flowing from one direction as it went in waves. The team took a moment to orient themselves, keeping their lights off while turning to face the direction the pulse was originating from. The last one in line tripped in the shuffle, losing his hand on the one in front of him. There was a brief shout, terror filling his voice. Then it was gone. His camera feed blinked out with a small burst of glitched pixels. The rest of the team turned their lights on immediately, shouting for him to do the same and stay close. Their cameras panned in every direction, desperately searching for their friend there just moments before. Nothing, just the cracks, still pulsating a faint green against their pale lights. The 5th member of their party was gone, nowhere in sight. The fear in their faces as the suit cams kept shaking, everyone desperately turning to try and find their teammate. It's something I've never been able to shake. That was 4 years ago now, and looking back, that was our sign to get the hell out of here. The team followed their line back after a while, making it back to base camp after a couple of days. None of them were normal though. Everyone began to steadily decline, their health beginning to crash out, starting with intense bouts of insomnia. By the time they were brought back through my segment of the base, it was like seeing corpses get walked through. They couldn't be taken out of their suits at this point due to how damn frail they were, worrying that they could break a limb in the process of getting them out or back in for transport. They were just wasting away in there. By the time they got back to the surface, they were practically soup in there. So damn decomposed, their bodies just melted within hours. I don't know if it was the rapid rise back to the surface. Maybe a change in atmospheric pressure? I don't know, but the reports we got back were that they had to just dispose of the suits themselves, because they were dead and gone. Unfortunately, however, they disposing of the suit wasn't enough. Despite the rotten corpses sloshing around inside the atmospheric suits, God, it makes me gag just thinking about it. The footage we got from up here a couple of days later was something even more disturbing than the fear I had seen on their faces just days before. They sent us the security tapes. I guess that in absence of any real idea of what to do with their festering bodies in those suits, they were just put in a cold storage in hopes of, I don't know, stalling any further putrefaction? They were in a deep freezer that was serving as a makeshift morgue, suits still on, and the gases inside causing them to stay rigid, nearly laying on the tables. God, the poor bastard that had to move them. Ugh. Through the cameras, you could see little droplets on the visors of the suits from what they were now. Anyways, it was maybe 12 hours? Not that long after they were put in there, one of the four just gets up, starts walking around like not a damn thing happened. The other three followed not long after, suits getting up and walking around the small cold storage area. Eventually, they started banging on the door, and I swear we could hear screams over the recording, begging to be let out, wailing in pain and misery. The first poor bastard that answered their cries. Well, he might have been the luckiest of us. Soon as the door opened, he was grabbed, one suit to each of his limbs. They just pulled, kept pulling, even after he came apart. Another guard came in once he heard those screams, started shooting at the whole group of them. When it busted through the suits, it was like they deflated. Only a decaying skeleton and dissolved flesh left inside. I don't know if maybe their souls couldn't escape the suits. I honestly don't fucking know. Maybe the pressure release just made it harder for them to move with the suits on. I don't know. I'm just a guy who studies rocks, for fuck's sake. They didn't move much more after that, though not for a lack of trying. Just couldn't get far in their incredibly fucked up state. The guy they tore apart was dead though. Dead for real. Good for him. For some fucked up reason, they kept sending people to explore the cavern, even after all that. Sunk cost fallacy, I guess. Might as well keep exploring when you've already put this much money into it. Lo and fucking behold, we find the Great Table a few miles further than where they left. The epicenter of those cracks, the pulsating light, it was huge. This massive slab of rock in the middle of nothing. That same dark black as the surrounding stone, so dark that one of our guys ran into it. For a moment, they thought it was a wall, but eventually realized they could go around it. All told, it took maybe half a day to circumnavigate the entire thing, and we're not entirely sure how tall it was. The cracks ended underneath it though, the pulsating green much more intense here than before. Every wave of light through it made it look like the table was breathing. Look, I want to preface all of this with, I don't know who's handing down orders for all we're doing up here. They gave the direction though, and we had no choice but to follow. A camp was set up next to the Great Table, and they tried to take a sample of the rock that it was made of. Except, they couldn't. Nothing could cut through it, even the most advanced mining tools we brought up there. They used everything. Drills, diamond saws, plasma. Nothing could get a damn scratch on the thing. Eventually, someone tried to examine it right then and there, but it was just too much to get any kind of reading on. Nothing we had on Earth or the moon so far lined up with whatever this element was. We spent months working on it, with the team by the table doing what they could to gather a sample. At some point about a year and a half ago, whoever was up tops sent down the order to try a controlled demolition. They set up about 2 miles away from the main table camp, setting up concussive charges to break through the base. Look, we all had our concerns that we voiced. They fell on deaf ears though, nobody hearing our cries for some kind of, I don't know, patience, some sort of sense when it came to busting through this unknown rock with explosives. Instead, we were told that if the crew at the table didn't do it, they'd just be replaced with someone that would. The rest of us were told we were equally replaceable, unfortunately, and that was that. I remember watching the live feed when they broke through. All of us gathered around to see if this would either be completely useless or the start of our damnation. Everyone knew, I think, that what we were doing was going to be nothing but bad for us. Guess someone had profit on the line though, so it was either we go along with it or go back home with jack shit in hand. Most of us chose to keep our livelihood at the time. Anyway, a few controlled explosives were put in at the base of the Great Table. Everyone cleared out to make room for the blast. And off it went. When the smoke finally cleared, all it had made was the smallest crack in the center, right where it connected to the ground. The crack made its way up the wall to the great table, jagged and thin, just a hairline fracture practically. Through it though was that same faint green glow. Where the table met the floor of the cavern also began to crack, spreading right along the corner and separating from the rock floor. We broke the table open only a hair, and that was enough. The crew stepped toward the crack to inspect it. We still don't really know what happened to them. From the brief seconds we caught on camera, it looked like they were sucked through, suits folding in on themselves with the people still inside as they were absorbed into the cracks. They barely had time to scream, basically being compressed into nothingness the moment they stepped close to the damn thing. It was like a fucking black hole contained to a 5-foot radius of the table. We weren't able to see what was on the other side either, suits getting their cameras crushed right along with their inhabitants. Needless to say, they didn't send anyone else too close after that. Not that it really mattered, because things started to go on a steady decline from there. The rot started to take over, slowly at first, corruption spreading from the cracks at the great table. The physical signs of it were relatively subtle the closer you are to the table, but the mental toll it takes. People close to the base camps started breaking down, changing mentally and physically. Their bodies atrophied, sometimes in days, sometimes weeks, and their minds started to go right along with their bodies. Long losses of memory, rambling and sudden violent outbursts. There wasn't any kind of real pattern to how people got sick. It seemingly picked and chose at random, settling in with relatively subtlety in the beginning. The first signs of rot were degradation of appetite, loss of sleep, and a general irritability. That started things on the course for chaos already, leading to plenty of workers assigned to the Great Table Camp to develop resentment and paranoia of their fellows. By the time that they began exhibiting physical signs, they were often delusional and violent, with an incredible disregard for the safety of themselves and others. Isolated incidents of violence and attacks became more frequent as the infection of rot became more advanced. As their mental state digressed, most would turn to attacking their fellow workers, believing that it would slow their decay. Whether that was true or not is a whole nother issue, but they seemed to believe that the more gruesome the kill, the more it would save them from the hell they were experiencing. The bodies began to stack up, gruesomely too. They would practically slice others up and turn them into makeshift altars to some deity. That's actually how we ended up with the name Rot, believe it or not. Many of them would whisper about feeding the rot as a sort of appeasement to it, giving it a non-resistant body to begin decaying further. They tended to only attack those that were healthier in turn, so things only began to devolve faster. Starting out, they were able to restrain the few that were disadvantaged in rot, but eventually, the sick outnumbered the healthy, or those still living at least. Keep in mind that I'm not an expert in how all of this went down near the Great Table Camp, because most of this was just received through survivor reports when they reached the nearest camp. They sent word back through, and it was pretty much over then and there. All of us collectively put in our resignation, storming back to the main outpost above, and demanding to be sent back home before this went any further. Maybe that was our own dumbass thinking. Looking back, we should have known we weren't getting out of here. They stopped any kind of transport immediately, nobody in, nobody out, and locked us the hell down. For a few days, we forgot all about the chaos below the surface as things went to hell up top. Everyone rebelling and turning to violence in light of their likely impending death. Some people lost it, others managed to pull their shit together. Either way, none of us had very long. I ended up going back to the surface. Camps down below were, well, they were bad. Most of them fell to infighting within a couple of weeks. Those that didn't had to tend with the rot as it spread further from the Great Table. The dark black color of the rock crept further and further out from it. A message we received from the nearest camp to the Great Table said, "This is the last camp. Be careful. There will be more. Be careful." It was a message we received from the nearest camp to the Great Table said, It reached them about a week after things went to hell. 6 months passed, and the entire chamber was a dark, rotting black rock, all the way to the elevator shaft I was originally stationed at. Needless to say, the lift was shut down, so it's a damn good thing that I had already moved up, though it feels like I was just delaying the inevitable at that point. The real problems began not long after everyone fled to the surface. We shut off the lift, basically made our own little security force up top that were constantly on watch for any of the rot or those corrupted with it trying to make their way up. I got put on the mind-numbing job of watching camera monitors. Honestly, seeing the monitor room for the first time made me feel like we were being experimented on, observed. Cameras were everywhere up here and down below, capturing every small movement that we made. Not sure who was disinvested in watching them all before I came along, but for me, it became watching our death slowly make its way to us. Everywhere down there was taken at this point. The cracks had spread further, trailing along with the darkness that set into the rock from the great table. As they spread, though, it was like the light in them became brighter, more powerful as it corrupted more and more of the moon. The poor bastards that remained down there, well, the ones that were living, wouldn't stay that way for long. The rot was corrupting people at a much faster rate the further they were from the great table. It's like the symptoms were dialed up to 11 as distance grew from the initial cracks, leading to a more spontaneous burst in violence before rotting away, trapped as muscles atrophied and left decaying corpses behind. Some were collapsed around the chamber, still in Atmos suits, as they desperately tried to find some other form of shelter before they were taken. Others were in the pop-up habitats we had scattered through the camps down there, right in full 4K glory on the cameras, rotting away as their brains remained fully aware of what happened around them. Some didn't get the mental psychosis. I think that was the worst part to see. There was no hint of violence, malice, or anything when they spoke, but you could see their bodies beginning to break down. I watched one poor man. Overnight, he began to go downhill, said his muscles ached, head hurt as well, and when he tried to stand up, his bones were so brittle that his legs simply broke. He was stranded there, as the rest of him biologically degraded over the next few hours, a waxy look creeping into his face before skin began flaking off, revealing a skull with eyeballs beginning to sag from it. I made it a point to start flipping away from his camera when it came up in rotation because he ended up staring straight into it, almost right through the cam and into my damn soul. Still gives me shivers when I think about it, even after he moved later on. I watched the cracks reach all the way to the lift before they stopped spreading completely. We honestly thought we were fucking saved. The cracks weren't an issue anymore. We had a couple of months where we even started deluding ourselves into thinking we might get out of here. A couple of the guys had been sending radio signals back to Earth, trying to get into contact with someone who could tell people about us. We were finally getting through to someone that was taking us seriously. But that was all for nothing, I guess. The bloom began to take hold a few months ago. I wasn't sure if I was actually seeing reality at first, or if I was finally losing my damn mind. Figured the stress of everything finally caught up, or worse, that the rot might finally have found a way up here to take me out. It took me a few minutes to reconcile that I wasn't just losing my damn mind up here. I was going through the cameras one day, just going monitor by monitor, flipping through whatever feeds were still coming from down there. And everything changed. It was that same atrophied man, the one that broke his legs trying to get up and was forced to sit there, feeling his body decay around him. The skeleton was partially broken down by this point, part of a decaying eye still dangling from the socket, as whatever internal organs he had left continued to rot away inside him. I had noticed there was a point of slower decay, usually after the skin sloughed off, and they just remained there as putrid frames, skeletal forms barely holding their remaining organs in as they rotted. I think it was so odd that it just didn't compute at first. But right behind that dangling eyeball was a blooming bright blue flower. I don't know how long I stared at it, only to flip away and flip right back, convinced it was just me losing my mind. But no, I started noticing it in other areas too as I flipped through monitors. There were flowers blooming deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, green light pulsating through the cracks in the floor around them as they blossomed into beautiful colors on all the rotting corpses. Those closest to the great table were the first to undergo the full process. Before long, their bodies were covered. An entire bouquet of blues, yellows, reds, pinks, greens, purples, so many beautiful vivid colors that I've never heard a name for, bursting forth on these decayed horror mannequins. A breathtaking sight. The vines of the flowers blooming on them would wind their way around the skeletal remains, covering bone and making them into whole new beings. Then they started to move again, slow at first, like they were just learning to propel themselves. But before long, the dead began to get up and walk once more. At the great table, even those that had been murdered and offered up as sacrifices to the rot began to be overcome by the bloom, leading to a whole second life as vine overtook rotted veins and muscles, moving them like puppets, all towards us. Their numbers grew, with those from the great table blooming in turn at a more rapid rate, before joining the horde of floral zombies moving ever closer to the lift. I alerted the others as soon as the bloom started, so everyone was aware of what was happening. There were probably only 30 of us left, with more than 100 down below, making their way toward us for a reason we have yet to know. One of our guys dropped the lift before they were able to reach it, cutting the cables so there was no way for them to bring it back up. On one monitor, I watched the crash, flames briefly coming through before they were snuffed out by the lack of atmosphere. I honestly wonder if that only gave them a more precise idea of where we were. The cracks in the ground had spread all the way there already, and the green light pulsated from them in the monitors, illuminating the field of rotten flowers as they moved ever closer to the last barrier between us and them. It did no good. They broke right through, inhuman strength pulling the shaft open despite the lift wreckage in the way. I don't have any cameras inside the lift, so I don't know how the hell they did it. Bastards climbed up though, mile after mile like it was nothing. Before we knew it was up here, flowers were blooming right through the cracks in the door on the lift. Swear, this was what it felt like to see the last march of the ants from the opposing side, knowing you were about to get murdered by a goddamn plant. I locked myself off in the monitor room. I know it sounds cowardly, but what the fuck was my choice otherwise? I would have let anyone in if they asked and were still alive. But, well, it didn't take very long for things to go to hell. I had a front row view for the carnage, and it just, well, it was bad. The bloom-filled corpses stormed in through the lift gates, overpowering it and leaving an entirely new ecosystem in their wake. Some of the guys tried to fight them off, some using fire to try and take them down, others resorting to weapons they cobbled together. It was no use. The moment a bloomed saw someone that wasn't infected yet, they would grab them, no escape possible. I saw one guy who got caught right outside of the main gates get picked up by 3 of the bloomed, each one stabbing into him with thick green vines. From there, it's like they didn't drain them. It was more like they cultivated the bodies they picked up. Maybe the vines transferred seeds or spores or something. But the poor bastards on the receiving end got the unfortunate privilege of skipping the rot phase entirely. They didn't even have the vines out of that first guy when the bloom started taking him over. I don't know if it's different because the bodies are more fresh, maybe more nutrients to pull from. Who the hell knows, to be honest. In his case though, the flowers were larger, more ravenous than the ones on the previous rot victims. They were still vivid colors, but the flowers themselves sprouted larger, almost overtaking portions of the poor guy's body completely as they bloomed outward. The guy fell to the ground, twitching for only a moment, before getting up and making his way toward former allies, the huge blossoms now erupting from his body and devouring those he could get hold of. I always loved Monet paintings, and this, one of the flowers blooming on this guy, reminded me of a water lily. Huge petals, all blossoming out from the center. Floating on a pond, they would have been magnificent. But here, I saw them quickly become drenched in blood as they tore into other humans, the petal edges shredding anything they came in contact with. Before long, blood was flying everywhere as the blossom overtook even more healthy humans, all being propagated one by one as the zombies made their way forward. As the droplets of crimson covered the petals though, they were just as quickly drank by the flora, seemingly driving it toward more. All I could really do was hide here in the monitor room. There was no hope for anything out there. The monitors told me the entire story of what I had waiting for me. The bloom from down below. Well, they started spreading through the main base up here, the rot and corruption following them as they went. I saw darkness spread through the white plastic and steel we used as building materials in the base, slowly creeping up from the lift shaft. I felt like I've been in here for an eternity, trying not to make any noise or call attention to myself, unless some of the bloomed end up finding me. The rot is going to reach me first at this rate though. Everything is turning black, slowly breaking down in decay as it goes. I can see rust growing on some of the exposed steel in spots around the base. High quality cameras keeping me hyper aware of just how screwed I am. No matter what it comes up against, organic or not, this decay just spreads, corrupting anything it comes into contact with. The first crack appeared up here yesterday, right in the transport hall leading to the lift gate, where there was only dark blood staining the blackened walls from only days ago when the bloom broke in. The pulsing green light was visible in the elevator shaft before it even got up here, an ominous glow cutting through the corrupted darkness. I swear it's breathing, pulsing, feeling for any life out there that it can still take root in. Me. I'm running out of food in here. I know I'm the last living person on the moon too, watching these monitors. I got to see everyone meet their demise. The last holdout was a guy named Paulo. Good guy, worked in the cafeteria and made some of the best adobo chicken I've ever had in my life. I don't know if he forgot about them or what, but I saw him running from the bloom a few days ago, desperately trying to live despite all odds. He found the cult storage room, the same one where the initial rot victims had been kept, and tore apart another guy. Guess he didn't remember that after everything else that happened though, because the moment he opened that fucking door, he was done for. 4 Atmos suits, all bursting with flowers and greenery like a mobile terrarium, took him immediately. Vines forced their way through his skin, along his back, in his stomach, one going down his throat despite his attempts to fight back, and began to bloom immediately. He was a shade of purple that popped against the dark rot infecting the base, beautiful in the decay. So here I am, all alone, orbiting the Earth, with something that would easily destroy the world slowly making its way toward me. The green cracks are spreading further in, and even though I know I'm alone, I swear I can hear people calling me. Whatever it is, knows my name too. It's all I can hear when I close my eyes. There are whispers in my ears telling me to open the door. Not like it's stopping the rot from coming through anyway. All this talking has worn me out. I'm going to try to get some sleep. Hopefully, without any of those flowery terrors coming in after me. I don't know how long I was asleep for. The rot is outside though, slowly seeping its way through the cracks in the door. There's this bad feeling I've got, telling me that the moment it spreads far enough to touch where I am, everything outside is going to know about me. I'm terrified all of them are going to come for me, tearing me apart and planting those seeds or whatever they are in me. This is going to sound suicidal, because it definitely is. I guess I feel some sense of duty though, being the last one alive up here and all. There are people back on Earth living their lives, unaware of any of the shit going on here. The rot, the bloom, all of this coming from under the Great Table. They never need to find out about it down there. I've made up my mind. Command is down the hall to my left, maybe a 70-meter dash if I have a clear shot. I don't know if there's a self-destruct button in there, but I do know there are direct controls for the ventilation and heating system. My plan is going to involve turning that on, closing off the oxygen scrubber system, and setting it to circulate the existing air in here. Nothing else. Then I'm going to the shop. There should be a direct access to it from under the command room, and it takes up most of the lower floor of the base before getting down into the lift area. I'm lighting up every flammable material I find in here and turning every nozzle wide open. The floor a few feet away from me is becoming dark, the corruption and rot getting even closer. That same whisper kept calling my name, even louder now. A scream rings out from down the hallway, making me shrink back into my chair. No putting it off. I got up and ran, bursting through the door and into the hallway with abandon. I could already hear something scraping across the floor from the opposite direction I was running, and another guttural scream burst through the still air as I ran. Command is in sight down the hall. Just have to push a little harder. A bloom burst through the wall ahead, arms flailing as it came barreling toward me, arms reaching wide as it ran. I made the best effort I could, squeezing against the wall and sliding under its arms, but one of the petals still sliced my shoulder. God, it hurts. I could never tell over the monitors, but up close, these petals have thousands of small spines on them. So fine, they were practically invisible. They stuck in the wound, stinging me further even after it had sliced through. I flipped myself in to the command door just as the thing began to turn back toward me, slamming the heavy steel in its face and hitting the pneumatic lock. That would buy me a second. I practically fell on the desk just trying to get to the computer. Blood was already soaking through my clothes below the wound, dripping down my sleeve onto my arm. I feel woozy, but I can't just stop now. Okay, check the computer. There, vent controls were one of the first things under the maintenance menu, thank God. I didn't quite think it through though. Of course, there was no way to disconnect from the oxygen scrubber. God, was that the rot fucking with my brain? Okay, plan B. Got it. There's an option to set the oxygen levels of the air inside the base, just in case anyone needed help adjusting to the atmosphere, I guess. Normally, we sit around Earth's levels, a solid 20 to 25% oxygen in the atmosphere blowing through here. How high will this thing let me take it? Holy shit, I can up the oxygen levels to 50%. 75 if I can get the emergency override code. Maybe. Oh my god, it's my lucky day. Humanity's lucky day even. The override code was scrawled on a sticky note, sitting right there on the desk. The bloom was still outside, banging on the door trying to get through. I set the levels, hearing the ventilation kick in as soon as I started turning it up. Oxygen is incredibly flammable, so just a little time and an accelerant, and we should be good to go. A vine burst through the door, scratching far into the room before it stopped and began feeling around to try and find me. Shit, time to get out of here. In the corner was a small hatch in the floor, looking right down to the workshop where all the excavation and mining equipment were kept. There would be gas line down there, an entire pump of it even, and God knows what else. Just have to get there. God, my shoulder hurts though. I really shouldn't have just looked at it either. There are small flowers beginning to bloom in the wound, where the little fibers from the petal were sticking. They were making their way further into my flesh, small sprouts beginning to pop up in vivid color. I felt my stomach turn. No, keep going, keep moving. I practically throw myself down the hatch, dropping in and falling onto a workbench nearby. I can see the tank nearby, pump hanging on a hook next to it. Limping my way over, I twist the nozzle, opening it wide and letting gas spray around the workshop area. This place has already been taken by the rot, darkness and mold covering the floor, countertops thick with a layer of grime as cracks began spreading further through. That same green pulse was already showing down here. I left the hose on the floor, still sputtering out gas as it went, and made my way over to another area. The small mechanic's bench had a welding setup nearby, huge canisters of natural gas on hand to run the torches, along with other dangerous stuff we shouldn't be playing with. Now was the time to use it though. Nozzles wide open. These things were going to help cleanse this place in just a minute. Maybe it's proximity to the rot or the wound I'm suffering. But my mind is going. I can see them coming in, the bloomed corpses making their way through doors and vents to find me. The rot tells them where I am, and they follow to claim me as part of it. The flowers are beginning to blossom in my wound, petals opening wide to drink up any blood that may still come out when I move. There's a lighter on a nearby welding bench. That's it, the final piece of my explosive puzzle. I'm going to hold out another moment, let the gas finish filling out the atmosphere of the workshop. They're coming closer though. I don't know that I can move. My legs are feeling weak, painful. Even my arms are suddenly having trouble lifting just a lighter. Just another moment. The bloom are starting to fall on me. I've backed myself toward the gasoline puddle on the floor, falling in it nearly face first. They came upon me next, and I can feel a vine puncture my back, right next to my spine. The colors are beautiful though, flowers blossoming through the pane. I flick the lighter, hoping for the best, before consciousness slips away forever. The rot still whispering my name. My last thought is that despite all the blood I've lost, I'm suddenly comfortably warm, at peace, even as the petals bloom all over my body. They are cleansed in an immediate rush of flame, purifying me to ash before the rot's decay can take me over. I wonder if those back on Earth will look up to see a beautiful garden on the moon. I pray that they see a fireball instead. And though they might not know it, they'll see their own salvation in the embers. You know the conspiracy. The moon landing was faked. It was a Hollywood studio set. It wasn't even filmed live. All true. You might feel vindicated, knowing that the televised broadcast was an elaborate ruse. However, I wouldn't smugly don that tinfoil hat. The 1969 broadcast was fabricated because the real moon landing uncovered unworldly horrors. In 1992, as a fresh-faced NASA employee, I experienced this organization's classified initiation process. I was privy to the knowledge that the iconic moon broadcast had been a hoax. I felt pity for Aldrin, Armstrong, and Collins. If the technology had been ready, they could have walked on the moon. I sighed. They deserved that mission. Nobody deserved that mission, Dr. Penny Bradshaw muttered. I ignored the scientist, as she wasn't the most socially adept person. Do you know about the first tape? She continued. I sighed, realizing the conversation could not be avoided. Huh? I asked, attempting to mask my annoyance. The first tape, Penny repeated. I don't know what we went to the moon, Penny said. The Apollo lunar module went to space, but it was the Eldo module which landed. It was the scouting module. Aeolaer and Smithson were the first men on the moon, and the Apollo module would have landed too. But a second module? I scoffed, before deciding to entertain the old woman's wild story. And why wouldn't these astronauts receive the credit for landing first? Snapping back into reality, Bradshaw flushed. Oh, I shouldn't have talked about this. Forget I said anything. Dr. Rowland told me that we never landed on the moon, I said. Why would he lie? Why would he spin an even taller tale? He could have allowed NASA employees to continue believing what the rest of the world believes. We distract you from the truth. Some things aren't worth knowing. Before the moon landing, we had no idea what we were going to find, Dr. Bradshaw explained. But there were murmurings about the unsettling frequencies, the received signals which had driven several scientists to abandon the project entirely. Many of the higher-ups didn't want us to send a manned mission to the moon, but the Russians were stubborn about pressing onwards. We had to beat them. "I don't understand, Mrs. Bradshaw," I said, not believing a word of her tale. "People saw things, Daniel. Things they couldn't explain. The radio signals drove them insane. One man took his life, but they don't talk about that. And they don't talk about what really happened on the moon." "They didn't tell us any of this," I said. "And if it were true, they would tell us." She sighed. "You have no idea about the things that they hide from you. Aldo 11 was a black operation, off the books. It ran alongside the Apollo 11 mission. It was intended to prove to NASA that Armstrong's manned mission to the moon would be safe." "Right," I sighed. Ignoring me, Penny Bradshaw continued. "We had a contingency to utilize a pre-recorded tape from the studio, and when Aldo 11 failed, that's exactly what we did." "What are you saying?" I asked. "We went to the moon, but the real tape was never televised?" Penny Bradshaw nodded. "There were two teams, Armstrong's team, and the team who saw a horror beyond your wildest imagination. I was nothing more than a newly graduated boy, and I knew that hazing was common in many workplaces. But in the case of Penny Bradshaw, I knew she didn't have a vicious side. I thought she simply lost the plot. She was an elderly, near-senile scientist who ended up retiring less than a year later. It was a well-known fact that Bradshaw was suffering from the early stages of dementia, but she had secured a steady position at NASA. She had status. I should have respected that. I should have respected her. But I didn't think about what she said until the Clementine mission in 1994. It was a disastrous expedition intended to observe the moon and 1620 Geographos, a near-Earth asteroid. But as was the case with many lunar missions, it ended up with a devastating spacecraft malfunction. Yet, with this particular failure, all I could think about was what Penny Bradshaw said. A horror beyond your wildest imagination. If that were so, why would NASA return to the moon? Perhaps I had wizened in my 2 years at the organization. Whatever the case, I found myself entertaining the idea that she'd planted in my head. "Hey Frank," I said. Frank Paris was known as the man who could get things done. Things which weren't strictly within the bounds of company policy. Things which often weren't legal within company policy. The IT specialist didn't even name a price for the favors. If you were a close friend, he would do just about anything off the record. He loathed NASA, though he still works for them to this day. "Daniel," he exuberantly said, throwing his arms wide. "This is a late shift for you. I was just about to head home." I embraced my friend and cut directly to the point. "I've been thinking about the moon landing." "Well, that's an interesting opener," he smirked, twirling in his creaking desk chair. "I've been thinking about the truth." "Ah, the greatest Hollywood story never told," he chuckled. "But that's not the truth, is it?" I replied. "We did go to the moon. They just didn't show what really happened." The squeaking of Frank's desk chair ceased, and he twisted to face me. "Did somebody tell you something, Daniel?" he asked. I nodded. Frank sighed. "And what makes you think I'd know anything about that? I'm just a lowly, nice try. You always know something, Frank," I interjected, grinning. He smiled. I do like that reputation. Of course, that doesn't mean I should know the things I know, just as you shouldn't. Is it true? I gasped. They double-bluffed us? Frank nodded. Why did they tell us that they faked the moon landing? I asked. Why not continue with the normal narrative? Why are they so determined to bury the truth of the astronaut who really walked on the moon first? They fed us a phony secret to keep our eyes off the real one, Frank answered. It's the sort of maneuver I would expect from the conniving worms on the board, of course. But I fixed their computers, Danny, and their security is abysmal. I've seen their secrets. They may know a lot more about physics, but I know more about the hardware that runs this place. What did you see, Frank? I asked. The man shiftily cast his gaze from left to right, ensuring that everyone in the office had gone home for the night. Then, he beckoned me closer. The real 1969 tape, he said. Though I knew nothing at that moment, the whispery tone of his voice iced my body. What was on it? I asked. Frank's eyes grew distant. Death. The computer expert patted a desk chair beside him, and I sat down. I have to file, you know. I shouldn't, but I do. And I'll show you, he said, starting to type. But the contents of that tape change you. I shivered, but my lips moved of their own volition. Show me, I said. Frank nodded, having already entered Prism into the Explorer's search bar. One final thing. He paused, hovering the cursor over a file entitled 011_tape. I sighed. Come on, Frank. It's okay. I know what. You don't know anything. And you'll know even less after seeing this. It will corrupt your dreams for nights to come. He interrupted. After I saw the footage, I had visions, Daniel. Awful visions. I made it through the ordeal, but I don't know what happened to me. The same thing that is reported to happen to anyone who watches it. I rolled my eyes. Come on, Frank. You watch too many films. You may be a man of science, Daniel, but in 10 minutes, you won't be. There are various classified documents concerning the tape. These reports detail the thing that Eau-Claire's team found. And, even 30 years later, we still don't understand it. Nightmares, hallucinations. I'm ready, Frank. This is an opportunity to witness a pivotal point in human history, something few people have ever seen, I said. I won't let this opportunity pass. But, Frank started. You survived it, I interrupted. I'll be fine. I'm willing to take the risk. Frank, curiosity gets the best of me. I don't believe that a tape causes hallucinations or feverish dreams, but I certainly hope it gives answers. He sighed. Some questions don't have answers, Daniel. Nevertheless, Frank Paris clicked on the file, and the tape began to play in a small window. The video contained grainy blurred footage of a metallic ladder leading towards a rocky cavernous surface.
This is Eau-Claire,
A man with a sturdy French accent announced.
Status report on the Apollo 11 module. Eau-Claire, this is Mission Control. Apollo 11 module nears arrival. Awaiting your verdict.
A static voice responded.
Roger.
Eau-Claire replied.
Taking my first step now, and the weather's looking fine. You're the first man on the moon, Commander Louis Eau-Claire. Congratulations.
The voice responded.
Thank you, Control.
Eau-Claire responded.
Smithson is joining me now. Second man on the moon.
Smithson joyously laughed. The pair floated aimlessly for a few minutes, reveling in the truth that they were the first two men on the moon, though nobody outside of NASA would ever know. I can only imagine the elation they must have felt.
Readings do not match those of unmanned missions,
Eau-Claire said.
No radio interference. Coast is clear. Negative. Picking up readings near the Surveyor 1 site, Commander.
Smithson said, visibly hopping into the distance.
Copy, Smithson. Did you copy mission control?
Eau asked.
Copy, Eau.
The static voice said.
Analyzing the transmission now. Unidentified radio signal confirmed. It matches the Surveyor 1 data. Confirm with primary mission controller. Waiting for the go-ahead to continue. Continuing exploration mission control.
Eau announced. The warped footage depicted the two-man crew pounding slowly across an ever-darkening lunar surface. Their craft had landed towards the dark side of the moon. Eau steered the camera towards Earth for a brief moment, and a white block was visible in the distance. The official Apollo 11 module.
Commander, are we clear to proceed?
Smithson asked. The second-in-command pointed an eager-gloved finger towards a lightless opening in the face of a mountainous ridge.
Eau and Smithson, this is mission control. Await instruction from controller. We have not cleared you to keep. Negative.
Eau interrupted.
I won't go home without seeing what's in there, sir. Smithson, we're heading into the cave. Eau the mission controller has.
The static voice started.
Return. Ship, Aldo 11 crew.
Another voice intermittently growled.
That order.
The second man sounded much sterner than the first, but the transmission was so choppy that it was barely intelligible. Eau took advantage of that situation.
Did not copy your last two messages, mission control.
Eau said, hopping ever forwards.
Entering the crater.
Commander Eau and Smithson soared into the blackened mouth of the untoward cavern. Dim lights fitted to their suits guided the way, but the camera's footage seemed to deteriorate with every passing second. Do you hear that? Frank asked me. I'd been so immersed in the recording that I had hardly noticed my friend and I were sitting in a dark, empty office. I had truly believed myself to be on the moon with Eau and Smithson. But I heard it. The crackling? I asked. Frank nodded. That's interference from the radio signal. What is this signal that they keep mentioning? I asked. Frank's face turned pale, but he didn't respond. He simply nodded his head at the footage of the astronauts floating to a narrow, lightless underground tunnel.
Commander Eau, do you see that?
Smithson shouted. The commander gently sprang toward his friend, and the camera revealed a domed room. Oddly smooth walls enclosed a tiny space. It all looked manufactured somehow. Unnatural.
What is that?
Eau whispered as the two astronauts swam towards the center of the room. I realized that the light was no longer coming from the astronauts. I distinguished a translucent, glassy object in the heart of the room, a triangular prism that emitted a throbbing glow. The recording was so damaged that it was painstakingly difficult to discern the visuals or the audio. And yet, something about that object was crystal clear. It was immeasurably vibrant, distinct from its surroundings.
This is the source of the signal,
Smithson said.
I told you we were right to land here. Excellent work, Smithson.
Eau said.
Mission control, do you copy? Aldo 11 crew, do you receive this transmission? Return to your module, now!
The static voice repeated.
Roger, we lost you for a minute there.
Eau lied.
It's beautiful, isn't it, Smithson? We'll go down in history for discovering this. Could it be evidence of alien life? God? Who knows? Future scholars will decide.
Smithson didn't respond.
Smithson?
Eau asked. The unresponsive astronaut hovered before the prism, transfixed by the inexplicable light it cast from its invisible innards.
Smithson, we're going to return to the module. Do you copy?
Eau asked.
They might still allow the Apollo 11 mission. We've proven that there is no danger here. I didn't used to understand.
Smithson whimpered, seemingly oblivious to his commander's presence.
I do now.
Aeolaer glided closer, filming the bright object. The audio interference increased in severity.
Smithson, are you okay?
Aeolaer asked.
Eldo 11 crew, return to your lunar module.
Mission Control repeated. And then, something happened which, to this day, I have not been able to rationalize. The prism's front face reflected something I recognized. A man standing beside Commander Aeolaer. My dead father. I exclaimed in horror, and the tape froze. What is this? I asked, panting heavily. But Frank, much like Smithson, didn't hear anything out of his own head. I'm sorry, Emilia. I'm so sorry. I was staring at something beyond any scientific explanation. In a 1969 tape on the moon, I saw my father. That tall, terrifying man from my childhood. A malignant man. A man who somehow eyed me from the prism's surface. An object filmed 30 years ago on an ancient cursed film. I had long suppressed the memory of what father did to me. The merciless beatings. The night on which he tried to kill my mother. My 10th birthday. But as his bulky black eyes bore into my soul, that painful prism provided clarity that I had never wanted, never needed. It reminded me of what happened that night, how I saved my mother. It revealed the knife in my hand, the blood staining the serrated edge after I sliced his throat. I had to do it, I convinced myself, eyes swelling with fearful tears. The prism tape unfroze.
Smithson?
Aeolaer cried. Aeolaer's camera was no longer in his hands. It floated in the cavern, and as it slowly rotated, the angle captured Smithson repeatedly pummeling his commander's body against the rocky wall. The deranged astronaut fumbled for the clasp beneath Aeolaer's helmet.
No!
Aeolaer screamed, futilely resisting the stronger man. The helmet released. Aeolaer ceased in agony for a dozen seconds before losing consciousness, and Smithson stiffly watched his friend motionlessly float before him. It sounded as if he might have been crying. Was he still in there? Did he feel remorse? It was impossible to ascertain what happened. As for Aeolaer's unsheltered head, the footage was, thankfully, too distorted to display the detailed horror of his oxygen starvation. The tape ended. The prism vanished. But on the glassy surface of Frank's monitor, barely discernible against the desktop background, the reflection of my father remained. Terrified, I tried to move. I tried to face Frank. The spectral father grew in the screen's reflection, and his face smoothed before caving inwards, transforming him into an eyeless entity. Following the clarity, there was distortion. The prism had shifted its focus, and we were slaves to its perspective. Using all of my might, I managed to snap my neck free of its paralysis, and I turned to see wide eyes on my friend's face. It was only supposed to be a dream, he whispered, breathlessly. The fluorescent light burst above our heads, and we were plunged into darkness. However, unexpectedly regaining control of our limbs, Frank and I fell from our chairs. "What did you see?" Frank panted. "My father," I whispered. "And he's disappointed," a voice hissed. I twisted my head to see my father, a man whose frame scraped the ceiling tiles. He was scarcely illuminated by the moonlight, but I could feel those eyeless sockets surveying me. "Run!" I yelled. We stumbled to our feet, and the nightmarish depiction of my father swung hopeful fingers in my direction. He caught the nape of my neck, and I cried in agony as I felt flesh peel away, buried beneath decaying nails. But I didn't stop to lick my wounds. I pushed Frank forwards, and we navigated the labyrinth of cubicles. It never seemed real to me, Frank started as we breathlessly ran towards the exit. Keep moving, I screamed. I didn't dare to look back, but I heard furnishings and office equipment crumble beneath the boundless limbs of my malformed father. The prism preyed on my darkest thoughts. It depicted Dad the way I had always seen him as a child. Frank burst through the exit, and the light from the hallway spilled into the office. We stumbled out of the blackness, and I spun to slam the door on the abomination pursuing us. Then, with bated breath, we waited for the creature to tear through the flimsy door before undoubtedly tearing through us. But nothing came. The sound of footsteps tapered away. I pictured my father silently waiting on the other side of the door, baiting me, much as he always had done during my childhood. But there was only silence. It must have been about 10 minutes later when one of us finally dared to move. The IT specialist shakily crept towards the office door. "Don't," I whispered. "Let's just leave." Frank shook his head. "We have to be sure, Daniel." The man threw the door open, and he flicked on the main lights. They illuminated an empty office space. My father was gone. "She's not here," Frank whispered, wiping tears from his face. "Who?" I asked. "I saw her when I first watched the tape. Emilia. My Emilia. She was my wife," Frank explained. "I saw her in my dreams. Nightmarish hallucinations, but never anything real. Nothing that came from me. This time, she was angry." "Frank, I began. "It was my fault, Daniel," Frank interrupted. "I took my eyes off the road, and I didn't see the truck coming. I didn't. It should have been me who died. That was what she kept saying as we ran. It should have been you. And she was right. She was telling the truth." "That wasn't her, Frank," I said. "I know," the man whispered. "And it wasn't your father either." "What is it?" I trembled. "The prism," Frank replied. "Everybody sees something different." "A person's darkest moment," I said. Frank nodded. "But it's never been real before, Daniel. It's never been anything like that. Look at your neck. That's no hallucination." I gingerly touched the bloody gashes behind my head, wincing as the adrenaline wore off, and the pain finally came to the forefront of my senses. "Why did Smithson kill Eau I groaned. "I don't know why he did it. I don't want to imagine what he saw." Frank shuddered. "Afterwards, he took his own life. Immediately following the horrors which unfolded in that cavern, NASA aborted the mission. Apollo 11's lunar module returned home, and the pre-recorded tape was broadcast on live TV." "What about the prism?" I asked. "NASA left it up there. Right?" "I hope so," Frank whispered.